Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so happy you're with us today. Here on Seek Reality, we're trying to make sense of an extremely confusing greater reality that's, in fact, nothing like the extremely solid seeming and basically normal seeming reality that we think we see around us. In actual truth, we now know that nothing is solid. We know that all that exists is what we experience in a dim way as human consciousness, and that consciousness is, in fact, the only thing that actually does exist. It's what primitive people first began to call God. It's what we now know as the highest Godhead. In a reality without time, it continuously manifests this whole reality around us. This material seeming universe is a place where we come to learn spiritual lessons only. And there's so much going on, frankly, that we have no idea about, but we're gradually coming to put it all together. We seek reality and we're now beginning to find it. But I have to tell you, there are still a few things that I personally am struggling to fathom. And some of the hardest things for me to understand are right here on earth, and they're all around us. And in fact, they're other people. Because we've been doing these Seek Reality episodes for 8 years now, and there are a lot more people listening than I realize. I've stopped counting a long time ago, and I don't even want to know how many people listen. But we get a lot of submissions from agents nowadays, which is one way I know we also have a lot of listeners. And we've stopped taking most submissions from agents because we don't have the time right now. Because I'm a kid in a candy store, I have trouble saying no. We're now booking about 9 months to a year ahead, and that's not fair to anybody. So we've stopped taking those submissions at this point. And once in a while, though, I have to take a new submission. And today's guest is one of those people that I just felt I had to take. Lee Blakemore is an adult victim of childhood sexual abuse. Her first book was Kids Helping Kids Break the Silence of Sexual Abuse, and it tells the story of 15 survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Her second book is called Entrenched, a memoir of holding on and letting go, and it's her own memoir of what being an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse did to her life. It's due out in a few days. I read it last weekend, and I think that last weekend I also ate meals. I think I probably slept, but I couldn't put this book down. Linda, welcome. It's good to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Roberta.
Even though you took away my weekend, thank you for being here.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. It's interesting to me when we, can read something that can engulf us and help us not only to hopefully be a little bit entertained, but also to really think.
Here's my problem. Very few things trouble me anymore in my life. I've seen a lot. And the things that trouble most people don't trouble me at all. I mean, people think death, well, there's a bad time. Well, everybody knows that I think death is a joy. I mean, my book was called The Fun of Dying, and that title comes from people who are actually dead, The Fun of Dying. People don't realize that once you're out of your body, the day you die is the happiest day of your life. All those wonderful things like death don't bother me at all. Those things are fine. I'm not even troubled by some of the most awful things that people nowadays think are terrible things. But one thing I cannot grasp is the thought that people would sexually abuse a child. I can't get that. So then I see that this book is being offered to me as a book that I could talk about. And it comes so well recommended. I mean, a lot of people I respect have read your work and recommended it. I couldn't say no to your book. And I do read the books that people submit to me. A lot of people who will take a book from someone and say, "Oh yes, I'll read your book and I'll interview you." They don't read the book. Well, I read the book. That's one reason that very often we'll have people over and over again, and rather than my taking new people not reading their book and just maybe skimming the questions that are offered by the person who gives us the book and not reading. I do read the books, but darn it, I could not imagine some of the things that people do to little children. There's nothing less sexual than a child. Let's be really frank about this. And how could anybody harm a little child? This is something which, I'm sorry, gets me. This is the one thing I think probably that gets me. And I finally decided I got to confront this one thing that bothers me so much. And I've asked you to come to Linda today to help me get rid of this thing that always has bothered me so much. And I'm going to confront it today with you. Tell me, what is this thing that somehow people think is okay? And apparently broadly, priests abuse children. How is that possible? Explain it, please, to me, please.
Child sexual abuse is not something that I think I can explain to anyone. I don't know that I understand why anyone would be interested in such activity with someone so innocent, except that, you can have a power over a child and you can easily manipulate a child. And so from that perspective of opportunity, and I have to believe in my heart that pedophiles are not born, but are in fact made. And I have to hope in my heart, although the statistics show otherwise, I have to hope in my heart that they can be rehabilitated. Again, the statistics don't support that. What I have come to understand is that the average pedophile touches the lives of 200 children. And that
is... Oh my God. Are you serious about that?
Yes. And, it's hard to even say it. It's hard to digest it. But it's a very intimate crime. So children have to be available and to be vulnerable, privately. So a lot of times it's a trust. It's a building of trust. It's a building of intimacy with not only the child but the family members. Babysitters, priests, coaches. We see all this going on in situations where someone is responsible for a child, in charge of a child, and alone with a child. And Linda, it's really tragic.
Please back up a step and explain to me why. Because again, I've been around children all my life. I was one once. I look at children. There is nothing less sexy than a child. Let's be really frank about this. A little kid. Kids are not sexy.
Nope.
Male or female children, they're just not. I mean, they're a little kid. I don't get it. I just don't understand it. There's nothing attractive about them. They're like a little lump of kid. That's all. Do you know why? Is it, you said something which I thought, okay, maybe that's why a little bit. Is it a power thing? The kid is little, and if you are a powerless feeling person, maybe you can have a sense of power over that child. You can do something to that child that the child can't fight back. Is that why? A little bit?
I don't know that I really understand it. I think it's opportunity. The person who is doing this has a need, a sexual need that is unlike anything you or I understand. And when the opportunity presents themselves, they groom a child. They create a relationship. And in my circumstance, it was a it was a relationship where, promises were made, gifts were given, special opportunities. I can remember one time when I had gone to a little local carnival type fair, and I was allowed to ride the Ferris wheel and my sister wasn't. Now, maybe it was just genuine. Maybe she wasn't allowed to ride it because she wasn't big enough. I don't remember. But, I went along with the relationship, if you want to call it that. It's kind of I don't know what other word to use, but the manipulation. I was promised things. I was given things. I was not hurt. I was not. I was manipulated. And a child's easy to manipulate. They believe you when you say things. And if you follow through a little bit, then they believe that you're going to follow through a lot. You make promises to a child, and they're very easy to win over. And children want to be loved and accepted, and
That's true.
They want to feel special. And people who do this understand that about children. They know how to make a child feel really special. And one of the interesting things that I came across when I was doing some of my research for the first book was it's not unusual for the perpetrator to actually be attracted to very attractive children. So if you have a family with a couple of children, he might, and it's not always a male perpetrator, but it is most often a male perpetrator. So I'll use the word he. He might actually, single out the prettiest child, the most bubbly child. It's an interesting dynamic, and I'm sure that there are people who have studied it from a professional viewpoint. I have not. I think my study of it has been from the standpoint of, one, understanding how to protect children, and secondly, as an adult survivor, understanding the impact that it had not only on my life as a child, but what I didn't realize was the depth of impact that it had on my life, even as an adult, even as a mother.
That's something which I never thought of either. I mean, there's so much I hadn't thought about, except it sort of creeps into your mind as you more and more see evidence of it in your adult life. I mean, I've seen, I know of a situation where someone went to prison, someone that I knew slightly went to prison for possessing child pornography. I mean, that's those two words together, child pornography. I cannot imagine those two words even being in the same sentence. Mm-hmm. And we all know what's happened in the Catholic Church. Priests moved from parish to parish because they were abusing altar boys. I mean, abusing altar boys. Those are other words you until recently, for most of my life, I would never have imagined those words in the same sentence. It's Linda, it's as if for most of my life, I never imagined any of this stuff could have happened. And yet it's been going on around us for our whole lives. Well, you knew it because it was going on more in your life. But then we look back at our lives, and I think someone tried to do it to me too. And I somehow protected myself. I didn't know. I had a horse as a child, and my parents hired a teenager in the neighborhood to take care of my horse. And one day, that teenager took me into the barn. I've never told this story in my life. I'm telling it now in public. I must have been maybe 6 or 7. He took me into the barn and he sat me on his lap. I don't think anything else happened beyond that. But I realize now that's what he was doing. He was trying to abuse me.
He was trying to begin to groom you. Yes.
Yes. isn't this horrible? What is wrong with human beings that they do this?
I wish I knew, because if we knew that, maybe we could fix it. But I do believe it's been going on for as long as human beings have walked the planet. And the other thing that I know is that when children are home for the holidays or home for the summer, and as we have seen these last 2 years at home for COVID, the rates of abuse skyrocket because children are stuck, trapped in these environments where this stuff can occur. So school is one place, and it's not always the safest place, but for many, many children, it is a very safe place for them to be.
Okay. So, I guess I apologize to everyone for sounding so distressed right now, but I just read your book. It's so much on my mind, which it really hadn't been, and I will adjust as we do adjust. But parents, I think, are going to need to be much more hyperactive, hyper aware about this than I ever was, because I was a clueless parent. We don't want to be clueless parents. If this is a possibility for our children, we want to be much more aware than I ever was. I think my kids were fine, but I need to probably ask them that question. What do parents need to think about with regard to their children? How do we protect our children from being abused this way? I mean, your parents didn't protect you. They didn't know to protect you.
That's correct. They did not know. And the truth of the matter is, I would not have said anything even if they had asked, because I had a relationship with this person and I would have protected that relationship and protected him. It was the child's version of the Cinderella story. It was something that I valued because I felt valued. I felt that he valued me.
Right.
The children will oftentimes not tell you. However, I will say to parents, having an ongoing conversation about good touching and bad touching. In my first book, Kids Helping Kids Break the Silence of Sexual Abuse, the chapters are broken down. They are designed for a parent or a professional to read with a child, to teach them what is sexual abuse, how are children manipulated, who is likely to abuse, what to do if you suspect abuse. And the short answer is, we as parents need to be hypervigilant about our children. If we notice changes in behavior, perhaps nightmares, bedwetting, a child doesn't want to go somewhere or do something that they perhaps wanted to participate in prior, there's always a child doesn't always have the words, particularly for this kind of a topic, which is far beyond the verbal ability of a child.
Of course.
But they can show us in other ways that something is not right. And we must be vigilant enough to notice those changes, to ask our child in a soft, kind, caring way that will allow them the opportunity to answer us, to protect them, to believe them, and to keep them safe. We all as adults want to have an evening out, right? With our spouse or our partner. We want to go out. We want to have a nice dinner and leave the children with a babysitter. These are normal things to want to have. And a good babysitter can be, a godsend, right? The children love
Absolutely.
This person and,
sure.
They can't wait for them to come. But if you have more than one child, you can perhaps tend to see, for example, my abuse took place at the home of my grandmother, my father's mother, and my sister hated going there. That was a sign. That should have been a sign for my mom. And of course she didn't know. I've never blamed my parents. They had no way of knowing.
Right.
But that was a sign. I wanted to go, but my sister didn't want to go.
Right.
We were treated differently. So those are just some of the things, but I would definitely encourage parents to, there are books out there like mine, other books out there, read on the subject, make it a conversation about what people are and are not allowed to do. And if your child doesn't want to hug somebody goodbye or hello, or doesn't want to give grandma a kiss, hello or goodbye, the child should be allowed to set boundaries for his or her own body. Yes, they should be respectful of their elders, but it's okay that they don't want to engage physically. You have to empower them a little bit to be in control of their body and to understand that, no one should be touching them in that kind of a way, and that they should speak up if somebody does. But children aren't all they're sometimes they're afraid, sometimes they feel responsible, sometimes the abuser will tell them it's their fault. Sometimes the abuser will threaten to hurt a sibling or, hurt a family member if they tell. So children can be controlled because they don't understand the power that they have by speaking out. They're little.
Yeah, they're little. They don't have experience. But you say it's more men or males, young males, I would say. I mean, it seems to be teenagers using children because they have a sexual desire and they don't have a sexual partner. That seems to be what happened in your case. Is that more common? Because I'm trying to understand, and certainly with priests, they're not allowed to have their own sexual partners, so they were using the altar boys instead. I'm trying to understand this. This is so grotesque to me. Why people do this, but at least if they're not allowed to have a partner, that's an explanation of sorts.
I think. I think that some people, regardless of age or whether or not they have a partner in their life, just are wired differently,
Really?
and perhaps have this desire or need, regardless of how old they are. The person who perpetrated on me did, in fact, I don't know the whole time, but as I say in the book, I mean, he was practicing because he wanted to be, wanted to be good. He wanted to be better. He didn't want to disappoint, I guess, or at least that's what he said to me. Who knows? But I can't really speak to why anybody would do something that I don't understand or agree with, or even could find the capacity in my heart to figure out why. I really don't know. Perhaps these people were also victims, and that's what they know. That was their first sexual experience, and therefore they're repeating it. I don't know. What I can tell you is that facing these issues, a lot of times these issues the repressed memory is so strong to protect us as we're going through our lives that a lot of times we don't even remember these experiences have happened to us until something triggers our memory. Like you said, this is the first time you've thought about this, reading a book, or perhaps there's a time in your life when you're going through a struggle or you're strong enough and your body starts to allow you to remember. My memories came back in the form of nightmares.
Yeah.
And it was a nightmare that I had as a child that started to recur. And I didn't make the connection at all, of course, because I didn't know why I was having that nightmare as a child. So, but it was the relationship with my to-be second husband, my fiance, that brought the whole thing to a head. And I believe that as adults, these things are a part of us and continue to form who we are and how we respond to ourselves, our world around us, the choices we make for jobs, housing, and most especially partners. until we can confront it. My choice of my second husband was my need, my body, my mind, my soul taking me back to confront what I had not confronted prior. There's an old saying that we choose our partners based on our unresolved childhood issues. And the question there is why? Well, certainly some people do it to perhaps try to gain control over something they did not have control over as a child. But for me, I did it because I was trying to have the happy ending I did not get as a child. As crazy as it would have been to have that happy ending then, I wasn't going to have the happy ending now either. But I didn't know that at the time because I was doing this very unconsciously. You know, this person was 15 years older than me. You know, the perpetrator was, I think, 12 years older than me. So there was many similarities in the relationship, the way I was treated, how I was loved, and rewarded when I was, you know, terrific and went along with the program, and how he withheld love. Both of them withheld love from me when I didn't go along with the program. And, so, you know, I was sitting in the office of the Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. And I dismissed this, I guess, because I wasn't ready yet to confront it or to absorb it or even process it. When, you know, she said to me, he's a lot like your uncle. And I said, well, I was talking about my uncle. You know what I mean? Like, she was talking about my husband, or the man who would eventually be my ex-husband. So the similarities were just so much that it made me think. And I have to say that, you know, my second marriage wasn't always bad, but there were certainly good times in there, and there was kind and loving moments and wonderful memories made. But the whole reason that I needed that relationship was to go back and confront what I had not confronted as a child. And he was not going to change. So I knew staying with a man who left was going to keep me entrenched in the very thing I needed to move beyond, which is how we came up with the name for the book.
Yeah. And I had totally forgotten about that experience when I was very small, totally not thought about it in decades. Mm-hmm. And it came to my mind as I'm reading your book. And so then with Harlan, with this, he must have been 15 or something when he took me in the barn and put me in his lap. And I'm desperately trying to remember what else happened. Did he abuse me? I cannot for the life of me remember anything except that he put me in his lap. I don't believe anything else happened, Linda, but I can't remember. Did I block it? I can't remember. Nothing else comes back to me.
I found for me that journaling, the whole process of writing was for me a journaling exercise to understand what was happening in my second marriage. I started journaling because I didn't understand the things I was feeling, the things I was remembering, the things that my second husband was doing. In fact, at one point, I said to a friend of mine when I was writing Entrenched, I started writing to understand the demons inside Jack, and what I discovered were the demons inside of me.
Yeah. But don't you think I'd have demons if anything else had ever happened? I do remember, as I thought about it more, that he wanted me to go back in the barn with him, and I never would do it again. It was like I was creeped out by the thought of it. But I've been married for 49 years. I think I would have had a much less healthy life if it had ever gone beyond that. He had me in his lap. I don't know, though. Isn't it awful not to remember anything like that? I don't know. It's better not to remember, probably, right? I didn't remember. at all.
I don't think not remembering. I think if you would know, you would be able to look at your life and say, I'm not sure I understand why I made that decision or why I chose that partner.
No, there was nothing else. I think probably he was probably starting to make me do that, but I didn't and wouldn't do it again. And so that was that probably. I don't know.
I'm not a therapist, but that would be my guess because immediately.
Thank you, dear. That makes me feel better.
As you can see when you read my book, the long term.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm attracted to reading that first book, except I think I don't want to read that first book. Does that make any sense? I don't think I want to. I think I know about enough now about childhood sexual abuse for a while. Maybe I'll read it in another year. Maybe then I'll have you back and we'll talk about the first one. Because that's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff. What adults will do to children, to vulnerable children who can't fight back. That's I can't begin to tell you how it hurts my heart to think of that, to see what it did to your entire life. And we need to talk about that too. I think we probably should move on to talk about that now, because it did distort your whole life, didn't it? I mean, I think your life is healthy now, right? You're in a good marriage now. You're having a good life now.
I am having a good life, but I needed to have that experience. That was my way. Perhaps other people would be able to do it differently. I needed to do it that way for whatever reason. And I'm really grateful that, all things considered, I certainly could have perhaps ended up with that first gentleman that I worked with, who was not a very nice person, as you probably remember from the story. But I didn't. So, and I'm grateful that the person that I did marry was good to my children. He never hurt my children or never physically hurt me. He just followed the same pattern of behavior of leaving. So it was the abandonment for me that I was able to go to the Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, and I was able to deal with the sexual abuse and deal with all of that. What I struggled to deal with was the abandonment. And for whatever reason, I hitched my wagon to a person who kept abandoning me. And I don't know if I was trying to have a different outcome. I was certainly trying to have a different outcome. If I behave a different way, if I respond to his, events a different way, if I don't respond at all, if I'm happy all the time, if I yell when he just, what I mean?
Yeah. I wanted to give him a good rap in the head quite a few times, actually.
Exactly. And I found myself, and what I realized was I was being hyper vigilant to him and to his behaviors. And I was anticipating and I was reacting is what I was doing. I was reacting. Right. What I wasn't doing, Roberta, I wasn't being aware of myself. I wasn't focused on me. So as a child, when you are in an abusive situation of any kind, a form of survival for a child is to be hypervigilant. You express a little bit of hypervigilance in that, you remember what he did and you remember that he wanted to take you back there. So you had your eyes on this guy saying, I'm not going to let him do that to me again.
No.
You were hypervigilant to his approach. Well, children who are in abusive, whether, dad comes home drunk or mom comes home with, a new boyfriend all the time or whatever the situation is, and they find themselves in an unsafe environment, children are very hypervigilant. And that protects them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It is. But you know what? The opposite happens as we are adults. Because as we're adults, not only does hypervigilant exhaust us while we're trying to raise children, clean a house, work a job, do all the things we need to do, be a good wife, I was so hypervigilant on my second husband that I wasn't aware of my issues of abandonment, of my feelings, and how I was actually the very thing that saved me as a child was the very thing that was hurting or hindering me from doing the healing I needed to do.
Yeah. Oh, Linda. I really, you gave me quite a rock. It was a very rocky weekend, but I really identified with you in your life, I have to say. So it's good to finally meet you and see that you're having a good life now. Clearly, to be an abused child is leads you to an adult life that needs healing desperately, and I'm so glad to see that you have healed, and you're not only a survivor, but you have triumphed, and I'm so glad to see that. I'm so happy to see that.
I'd like to leave you with one statistic. When you think about the effect that childhood trauma can have, a child who has been sexually assaulted is 6 times more likely to be raped as a teen or as an adult than someone who is not. And I think that goes back to the fact that it affects how we see ourselves, how we interact in our worlds, how we expect to be treated. So it really does have an effect that we need to, one, do everything we can in this world to protect our children and keep it from happening in the first place. Second of all, we need to be so aware of who we are and what we have been through and seek the healing that we need to keep ourselves and our children, the cycle of abuse. We need to stop the cycle of abuse and keep our children safe.
LindaLeeBlakemore.com is her website. She speaks on childhood sexual abuse, on how to protect our children, how to help our children if they've been damaged in some way. And as you can hear, she's an eloquent speaker and advocate for children and for young women. It's very hard for children to grow up unabused at this point. This is something it turns out, apparently I had a close to perfect childhood. It's odd for me to say, and yet I say it. And my father was an alcoholic who got drunk every weekend until I was 11 years old. And yet I still feel as if I had a perfect childhood. And then I had that experience. No child grows up perfectly. There's no way we can apparently escape childhood unharmed. But Linda is someone who has been there, and she can help children, and she can help if you need a speaker on the topic. She is someone who can speak with eloquence about how to help children to triumph. So, Linda, I think you just did a wonderful job. I'm so grateful that you came and spoke with us today. Thank you so much, my dear.
Thank you, Roberta, very much.
What do you want people to take away from today? Is there a message you want people to take away?
The message is that we can all heal, we can all rise above, and we can all have very happy, healthy, productive lives. And once we get beyond the trauma that we have endured, it is possible to find reciprocated love and truly have a fulfilling life. It's out there. It can happen. Don't give up.
Don't give up. That's beautiful. Thank you, my dear. Please consider yourself hugged.
Thank you.
Again, everyone, we've come to the end of our time. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so glad you were with us today. Please never forget, you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began and you never will end. And when you get that, it changes everything in your life for the better. Our guest next week will be Courtney Marchesani. Courtney is the author of a book called 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive, and she's the developer of the Highly Sensitive Gifts Test. She was named the 2017 Hay House Writers Workshop Awards winner, and her insights into sensitivity, I guess that's a program. It helps her readers to identify their gifts of intuition. These are the 4 gifts: intuition, empathy, vision, and expression, so they can maximize their potential while also learning how former traumas may have helped to shape those gifts, which to me is an interesting concept. Her health and wellness coaching style focuses on holistic medicine and finding balance while living with sensitivity. Since sensitivity is also closely interconnected within the nervous systems and brain functioning, it's not something you really want to get rid of. She's known for her intuitive and empathetic style, which emphasizes acceptance, learning how sensitivity's silent effects can impact mental, emotional, spiritual health, and wellness. And of course, this week we've been talking with Lee Blakemore. She's a speaker and an advocate for women and children because she's been through it all herself. Her first book is called Kids Helping Kids Break the Silence of Sexual Abuse. It tells the true stories of 15 child survivors. That book received prestigious endorsements from hundreds of professionals across the country, and her articles about the book appeared in national magazines, including America's Family Resource, 17, and Teen Voices. She's appeared on local, national, and international radio and television, including The Montel Williams Show, and she's traveled the country advocating for children. Today, we've been talking about her second book, which frankly wrenched me to the core. It's called Entrenched. It's a memoir of holding on and letting go. She educates modern young women with wisdom and with what, frankly, which I consider heartbreaking honesty. I spent a whole weekend with this book. It was a weekend I will never forget. It's important stuff. It's moving. It's something which I think we all need to do to go more deeply with someone who is trying to get over a past which, frankly, she had to get over in order to live a normal life. And many people apparently have been through this sort of thing. I didn't even know about it. Here I am. I'm an old person now. I never knew any of these things happened. And I'm only now realizing they may even have happened to me. So this is important stuff. As you know, my own nonfiction books are called Liberating Jesus, My Thomas, The Fun of Dying, The Fun of Staying in Touch, The Fun of Growing Forever, The Fun of Living Together, and soon, very soon now, this spring, The Fun of Loving Jesus, Embracing the Christianity that Jesus taught. The Fun of Meeting Jesus is a children's book, which I'm still hearing from people that their children love. You can order all these books through bookstores or on Amazon, and the adult books are available as children's books. If you want to talk to me about anything, you can always just contact me through the green contact block on robertagrimes.com. Past episodes of Seek Reality are available on webtalkradio.net and everywhere that podcasts can be found. Meanwhile, of course, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy, please make the most for yourself and for the world of this coming week in our one reality, knowing that you are a powerful, eternal being, and you, most of all in the whole universe, you are infinitely loved.
You've been listening to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Join us every week as we explore what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about the one reality we all share. Knowing the truth changes everything.